Well, if we just sit here and say nothing.
We could do that. We could talk about how small your new DJI mic is.
Oh,
seeing this guy's mic.
oh, yeah. You want to talk about they're talking about zoom lenses, and we can talk about the DJI mic.
Well,
It is tiny.
the only thing I see in this video is his microphone, so let's talk about that.
What lens are they talking about? I missed it. I wasn't paying attention.
They're talking about a few lenses there, but
Best
I forget.
lenses of the year. Yeah, you got it wrong. It's a 28 to 105, 2.8. Have you shot with that lens?
No.
28 to 105?
The 24 to 105 f4. I've shot on that, and I do love that lens. That lens is really good. Keep it at obviously an f4, but
You think that is that your preference? Have the extra 4 millimeters on the wide end?
it's stabilized. That's one of the reasons why I use that lens.
Okay.
But I think it's worth it to have that like in combination with the internal stabilization. It just is more helpful.
Yeah.
Plus, like that, a lot of the stuff I'm shooting with that lens specifically, I'm choosing that lens because it's a little bit, it's not as shallow, because I want more in focus usually. But,
Yeah, especially at those longer focal lengths. Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting to me that 28 has become this new kind of base end, because they're talking about a Sony lens here as like a 28 to 70 f2, which is impressive. That is nice, but 28 is not wide enough for me.
No.
A 24 is wide enough, but I want a 20.
20's really nice. We've used 20, the full frame equivalent to a 20, basically, on a Micro Four Thirds system, and that's great, especially if you're doing if you're following someone into a space and like to see the space still, because 24 is getting to that point where it's like it's wide, but it's not wide enough. I do like the 35 to 150 lens. Tamron makes that lens, and there's also I think it's an E mount and also an L mount, but I think that's a really good range for like a docu style.
Intentionally knowing, hey, I'm not going to get those
Yes.
wide shots, but I'm going to get that reach, and everything's going to basically look cinematic.
Yes,
because
exactly,
everything
because it's
is
a little
shallow.
bit longer focal length,
Yeah,
and it's
you
an
have separation.
f2 to a 2.8, which I think I would rock everything at a 2.8, except for doing an interview. I think I would shoot an interview at an f2 at like the wide angle for a 35. But having that range, you could probably have two of those lenses and have the perfect interview kit
That's true.
with those two, dynamic, focal lengths.
There's just always an element to me that gets lost, and I try and balance that cinematic quality, the cinematic aesthetics of the separation, the background blur. You look at any movie, any TV show, if it's cinematic, it's usually shot with something longer than like a 35, or some similar full frame equivalent. But for me, I like the authenticity of getting up close and personal with something like a 20 mil on full frame.
Yes.
It just looks more real, more raw, more genuine. And I think when you can balance that with the more cinematic stuff, it feels really, really nice.
Yeah, there's literally nothing to hide. Like you're hiding nothing when you see the whole space. So that's something that's kind of unique as well, because it's like usually, if you're shooting at like a tighter focal length, you're able to hide stuff that's like, it might be dirty, it might be, something just out of frame, but with that though, you have the availability of introducing lights, which is something that, is nice to do. Sometimes in the past we've done like a light with a Fresnel in the edge, like the back corner of the room, just, have so everything has like an edge to it.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of good. But if your lens is too wide, you might see that.
Yeah, true.
So
Yeah, I usually only do the 20 mil look when it's a more authentic, genuine space. There's not a lot of light added,
Right.
hardly at all. But it's perfect, I think, for that documentary reality style where you can get that cinematic look with a full frame camera, shallow depth of field,
yeah,
nice color, a good dynamic range, but it feels like
you're in
the
space.
perspective you'd get from an iPhone, or the
Yeah.
perspective you'd get from a webcam or something like that. Because all those cameras are meant to just kind of like point it in the direction and like you get everything.
An interesting thing about that 35 to 150, Sony doesn't make that focal length lens. It's, Tamron makes it, or I think Rokinon makes it as well, and maybe Samyang. But I believe Sony doesn't make it because they don't want to, compete with their other awesome lineup of lenses. So I think that lens might not be available for a while. But I think Sony should come out with it. I think it's a good lens. If they could make it stabilized, then it'd be the perfect lens.
Oh, it'd be a perfect
But it's
lens.
already a pretty big lens, so maybe not.
Yeah, that one's pretty chunky. I think I just want a 20 to 50 on full frame.
20 to 50 would be nice.
Perfect complement to that 10 to 25 on micro four thirds.
That
Too
lens, you do, have to stay pretty close, though. I do like on the micro four thirds, the 10 to 25, you can get really close focus, which is nice, especially at that 50 millimeter. But you are really close to the subject, to get that close focus. So it's not like you're getting like a telephoto close focus, which can be nice, especially, if you're trying to, pick off shots. That's, again, using that Sony lens, the 24 to like 240. Like, that's a really good lens where you can be in like a public space and like get generic B-roll of just, people in a space. Maybe they're working or something like that, like at a facility perhaps. So you get like authentic, real human beings like doing what they're actually doing instead of, performing for the camera.
Yeah, being in their face. They don't even really necessarily know. That is the nice benefit, at weddings or wherever you might be. If you need to film real people, and they don't necessarily want to be filmed, or they don't expect, they don't know, because then everyone gets that little camera shy when you show up in their face. So yeah, having something a little bit longer with reach, you can kind of. But then they'll look at you and they'll catch you.
Yeah, you get that side eye of the one person who does see you.
Oh, never mind, I'm filming something else. Point it away.
What are they doing here?
I don't know. Is this for like a portrait?
Who are these guys?
Petapixel.
No, I know. What are they doing?
I don't know what they're doing. This is a sponsorship placement. That looks like something I would have shot with probably 15 years ago.
Like, this is really hilarious because, like, at a glance, like, obviously I'm not really listening to this video, but at a glance, you're like, microphone's in the shot and the light's definitely in the shot.
Well, yes. And it's product placement.
I'm sure it was a gag that they were doing.
I mean, the microphone blends in better on the darker shirt.
That's true.
Because I think it's Chris and Jordan, I think are their names.
This is not a flattering angle, usually. Like, I always try to avoid the crotch when I'm shooting somebody.
Depends on what you're filming.
Personally. If it's definitely a podcast situation, I'm not.
Well, it could be the confinements of the space.
Yeah.
There's no crotch in that shot.
Nah. Something we've done in the past is do like 2 cameras over the shoulder. Like, we'll have a tight shot of the person and then a wider shot.
We can't quite do it in this studio as much as I'd like to, but in the other studio, we definitely had that perfect like over the shoulder with the wide. This is kind of I assume they have like a camera operator of some sort.
Yeah, on the side there, set off.
But it's like all the cameras are right next to each other. Like there's that one. It's more of like you were talking about the Flagrant podcast where it feels like a stage play or like theatrical when everything's shot like from the front.
Yes.
And I feel like we could do that in this space too, but I would look less nice if everything's from the same direction.
I did initially set up this room, this room at another location. I did set it up like that where it was very like all on one end of the room and all the cameras were on the far end of the room.
Just pointed,
Which, it's another look. But the way we ended up with, where it was like over the shoulder, it was more cinematic.
Yeah. For me, with like this camera there, I think would be nicer if it were like there.
Yeah.
Because then you see my eyes looking at you right over your shoulder. That would be a nice spot for it. Where it is just out of limitation of the space.
And the actor way to look at somebody, depending on where the camera is, you look at the one eye, but you look at the eye that's favoring the camera side. So that your face is a little bit more open. It's still like,
subtle.
It's off a little bit, but you're looking at the eye that's closer to the camera.
Do you ever notice that though? I used to notice all the time on CW TV shows. For distress, they would bounce between the eyes. They would like flicker. Like that's like an acting thing, I think, to look concerned. Just change the eye you're looking at.
Well, what's the direction you look at if you're lying?
Oh, it's like up into one way.
Up or down, like off to the right or something.
What are they talking about? They're talking about Nikon right now.
Nikon.
Number 2. Favorite camera. What are we? Best video camera.
So
GH7. Hey, I got one right here. Heyo, but that's their number 2. What's their number 1?
Z200 coming in at the last minute.
No, it's not gonna be the Z200.
It's got to be the Z200.
It's gonna be
it's
a
got
Sony.
Everything. There's no Sony that came out. maybe
There's nothing that came out. No Sony this year.
Z200.
Oh, they were shooting this on a GH7.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I don't know. The Burano.
No way.
I saw.
They don't talk about those cameras.
Someone sent me a YouTube channel. It's like V3 or something like that. It's like some like docu-style channel. But the guy like was literally shooting it on like a very bare bones Burano and like just a photo lens. And I was like, that's the goofiest look of all time. Like he had it like on his shoulder. It looked great. Like the footage was outstanding, but it's just a very funny look to see a Burano stripped down to just like the body and lens, basically.
Does that, because on the bottom of the Burano, it's probably just flat. There's no even shoulder.
I think he had a little shoulder
thing,
like a padding.
Just first A9 Mark III. You like that camera, right? The global shutter, is that one?
I believe so.
The A9 Mark III.
It's just obviously like a photographer's camera.
This is best video camera though. This is their section, best video camera.
It's probably, I mean, I'm sure it captures great video.
With a global shutter, it ought to.
Yeah. I wonder how many people are using it for production.
Probably not a lot. It's kind of expensive, isn't it?
Actually, I do know one production company in town that's using it.
For video?
Yeah, for both photo and video.
Yeah.
But yeah, they do shoot video on it for sure.
Perfectly valid. But that's one of those where like, they're saying, so Petapixel's saying it's the best video camera.
That's
You're
awesome.
saying someone is shooting video, doing production with an A9 Mark III, right?
It's not their main camera, but yes.
But they're shooting video.
Yeah.
It's marketed as having global shutter, which is that more important for video or for photo?
I mean, it depends. If you're a strobe photographer, it could potentially be very beneficial for photo. If you're a professional photographer who uses strobes.
I don't know. Would it matter?
According to professional photographers who use strobes, yes. Because there's that, like you can get a lot of issues with like the blades. Like, have you ever shot with strobes over like a shutter speed if you're not using like
high speed sync, right?
sync?
Yeah. So that's a limitation, right? Normally, like a basic speed light or strobe kit, you max out like 1/200 because you just can't.
Yeah.
The camera can't match, but unless you do high speed sync. But you're saying so you can shoot beyond.
I don't know.
1/200th.
I just know that a lot of photographers were saying that it was like the best thing for what they do. I don't do that as much, but
yeah. I just have never, when I'm thinking back to the past when I've done flash or strobe work, rolling shutter hasn't been an issue for me in the images because it's separate from the camera, right?
Yeah.
If you're in that window, you're under 1/200th of a second. I mean, your exposure is just the burst of light, which is faster than your camera snapping anyway. So I don't know what the set of circumstances would be where I'd need a global shutter versus something like video where I need global shutter for every frame because I'm getting skew, I'm getting jello, I'm getting all these artifacts, which is like, that's constant. That's every frame of every video you've ever shot. So I get it as being a benefit for video cameras, but I don't know that would make it the number one video camera for me. Oh, my point being was that the A9 Mark III, I'm sure, doesn't have shutter angle. For all the video features that it probably does have, I don't think it has shutter angle because it's just not in their FX line.
Well, the A7S is not like their cinema line, but they did finally give it an update.
Not to do shutter angle?
Yeah.
On the A7S III?
Pretty sure.
I thought that was only on the FX3 and the FX30. Got it.
I'm pretty sure they came out with the update a few months ago.
I heard they were like talking about doing it.
Maybe. Hold on. We could look it up.
I'm going to fact check.
We have the technology.
We do have the technology. Not on the computer, but on my phone I can pull it up. I think it's still like coming, or they never rolled it out. A7S III shutter angle. This will blow my mind if they actually did it finally. Yeah, 2 months ago, will the A7S III get shutter angle 2 one day soon? Someone on Reddit was asking 2 months ago if it. The FX3 has got it too. Just wish Sony doesn't ditch us. Our cameras are goated. Most of them are used close to the cinema line.
Shouldn't there be like a version 2 of that camera at this point now?
I bet that comes next year, yeah.
Like it's going to be like a Mark II. I thought for sure they came out with it. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, so this person commented 89 days ago. So maybe there's something newer. But they said, Sony is saving all their cinema features for their FX line, shutter angle, LUT support, and the like are for the FX. So what are we looking at? Best photo ZX or Z6 Mark III? for their favorite photo camera. Is that where we're on? Yeah, best photo camera. Those Nikon cameras are quite incredible. I want to try one out, but I have almost PTSD from Nikon. You owned Nikon at one point.
No,
you never did?
Mm-hmm.
I thought you did way back when in high school or something.
No, that was, I think my decision was, it's like the Nikon D90 camera versus the Lumix GH1.
And you went with Lumix.
And I went with Lumix.
Yeah. I just never found the Nikon cameras to be intuitive, but also I learned on Canon, so maybe that's just a personal limitation. The Nikon stuff just always felt a little clunky. The menus are weird. The button layouts I never quite liked. Maybe they've adjusted all those things, but I definitely have PTSD from owning a D600 and then thinking I'm not going to own Nikon ever again. But my uncle always liked Nikon. That was his favorite.
So this is a brief snippet from DP Review. I was just quickly asking like about the global shutter for strobe photo. And this snippet says global shutter lets you use flash at much wider range of shutter speeds. So you can use a short exposure to prevent sunset blowing out, but still light your subject with a strobe.
Cool.
So that's interesting.
Okay.
So maybe like with less power.
But. Yeah, not using the high speed sync technology and doing global shutter.
Short exposures. Or I guess that's brighter if it's a shorter exposure, no?
I did hear
brighter is longer.
I did hear on that A9 Mark III though that the global shutter comes at the cost of I think it's either less dynamic range or more noise or both. There's some trade-off.
Yeah.
I think it's more noise is the one that stands out. That was a nice shot. Mm-hmm. The Canon, they're cheersing.
But it's probably worth it though, the global shutter, because when I see I can notice obviously if it's a global shutter, and usually it's when it's like an action type sequence. So if you're watching like a Under Armour commercial or a Nike commercial, they'll usually use cameras with a global shutter, and you can notice because it doesn't look jello-y basically.
Yeah.
But
nice feature to have, and I hope that technology trickles down to the more affordable cameras, because it's nice to have it in one body, but ideally it's on every body in your camera kit.
Yes.
And you get to that point of where these cameras are coming out so fast that it's hard to justify an expensive camera when a year later there'll be one half the price that does twice as much.
Right.
That it used to not be that way.
They'll also release...
Cameras kind of stood up for like 5 years, and now it's every year there's a new one that's way better than the last one.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting how we were just talking about, the Z200 camcorder, which has all the features that you'd want on a camera, except for the one that everyone was usually mostly focused on, which was like the sensor size. So you have all these other features, but not the one that everyone for years was focused on. So
it's not full frame? It's
not
Micro
full
Four
frame,
Thirds?
full frame, full
It's
frame.
garbage. And now, the Z200 is smaller, 1-inch sensor, smaller than Micro Four Thirds, but it's
getting a ton of attention, because people at this point just want to create content. I think that has a lot to do with just seeing content on social media that's pumped out, not even daily, hourly, minute, like by the minute for some people. Like I've seen some podcasts producing content while the podcast is live. Like they're cutting clips as it's going and posting them. Like that's next level content creation. But I think people are just more concerned with output and creating a camcorder that has just everything built in, and it's just so much easier to just pump out. And then even that Z200 has like live capabilities where it itself can connect Wi-Fi, or you can like hard line in with like your phone, let's say, if you want to connect that way. But insane. What was that other new camera that came out that you can like stream to like to YouTube and Instagram at the same time? It's that new box camera.
Oh, that I sent you on Instagram? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's Hollyland.
Yeah, Hollyland.
The Venus something or another.
Which Hollyland, I've had some of their products. I've had like their wireless transmitters, which great transmitters. But I didn't know that they were in the camera game.
They seem like one of those new, I assume they're Chinese. Maybe they're a Korean company. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But they seem like a Chinese company that's like getting started, kind of like Aperture back in the day.
Yeah.
Or who's another one that I'm thinking of? I don't know.
Yongnuo.
Yeah, Yongnuo. Yeah, these ones that like do enough.
Seven Artisans.
Yeah, they build enough
Rokinon.
credibility that they can like finally start making good products.
Yeah.
I don't know if that camera is any good, but it looks kind of neat the way they have it set up. Oh, that lens sucks. This is absolutely right. That
Are
lens.
they saying that?
Yeah, this is the worst lens section. So that
Oh, the worst lens.
that
section.
Pancake that Lumix makes, it's god awful. Oh no, this is the equivalent. The RF 28. That's much better, I think, because it's a 2.8. Are they saying it's the worst? What are they saying? Hold on.
Feels like, remember those lens cap lens? He means 26. 26.
Maybe they didn't bring up the lens I thought they were talking about. But the one I'm talking about, so Lumix has like a 26 Pancake lens. It's an f8,
Yes. I have one of these lenses.
no autofocus.
Yes. I have a 7 Artisans version of that kind of lens that's like an f8.
Gross. But that's for Micro Four Thirds, you said, right?
Yeah, and it's manual focus, but
Yeah.
I like it.
For
but
what?
For that purpose of getting that more manual feel. Makes me feel like a real photographer.
And it's an f8?
I think so. It's let me look it up.
You should find out. Because I was
Pretty sure it's an F8.
appalled by how bad that 26 mil is, just from the standpoint of functionality. It's an f8, no autofocus, and yet Canon, with the RF mount, has a 28 Pancake that's a 2.8. So there's almost nearly identical lenses. One is fixed f8, no autofocus, and Canon makes a 2.8 with autofocus.
Right. This one is an 18 millimeter, but
Okay.
it's a 6.3.
So, and that's a Micro Four Third?
6.3. Yeah, which look how like small this
Yeah,
lens
that's like a
is.
lens cap.
This is, yes, a literal lens cap lens. Which is super sweet. I like it a lot.
No, with that, I don't have it in here. With that S9, I want a fast enough Pancake lens. It doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be a lens cap, but just a Pancake lens. It needs to be faster than f8, and it needs autofocus. It's silly to roll out Lumix, who for the longest time had terrible autofocus. They roll out, hey, now we have phase detect. Hey, we can do all this stuff. Here's a lens, manual focus only. What is the point in that?
Yeah, no, that's terrible. What I do like about this lens, the 7 Artisans, because you can like kind of look at the lens, and I know from, you can test the lens for like a few minutes and kind of figure out where the focus needs to be for an average distance of where someone is, because that's a lot of what street photography really is. Especially when you're using more like manual cameras, you just get used to like, okay, at this, if I'm looking at my lens at this, point, then someone 5 feet away from me is going to be in focus. But that's kind of how I use that lens. So I'm just that's just how you use it.
Just eyeballing it.
Literally. But there's a lot in focus, especially if it's a Micro Four Thirds shooting at f6.3. You're probably going to be in the ballpark. So
They're talking about worst video camera now. This was a Kodak something or another they're playing around with. Oh, so they're comparing it to the old Kodak. Ooh. Looks more like a novelty gimmick thing. I never even heard of this video camera.
nice. I like their decor in the background. It's very
Yeah.
Christmassy. Hey, how meta is this? Us just talking over two dudes talking. Like,
Yeah,
imagine
yeah.
if we did this at like a Starbucks. If we just saw two guys talking and we were just like, let's listen in for a little bit and then have our own conversation.
We've talked about
them.
doing that though,
I want to do that.
where we've been
That's right,
we've
yeah.
been sitting in the car and like watching people walk by and just
People
doing
watching.
commentary.
Yeah.
Oh, he looks like he's having a bad day. Some guy
be
walking
terrible.
by, all disheveled.
We should go to like a live event and then use a camcorder, the Z200, and like zoom in on like other production people. Be like, love his setup. That's a nice rig right there,
Look at
man.
this guy. Look at this guy. Yeah, it's I don't know, something to watch.
Yeah. I love how I'm assuming it was this impromptu. This looks like an
No, they
impromptu
look like
video.
they set it up. They have games they're playing. They're having a good time. Celebrating the end of the year. I enjoy their stuff. It always just comes from that photography first. And then they have Jordan there to talk about the video side of things, which is more or less just the nature of video as it relates to producing their YouTube videos,
Yes.
sort of, so to speak. So it is interesting from that perspective, but
Has he talked about the Z200?
I don't think so. Not
This
in
would
this
be the
video.
perfect camera for what they're doing here.
Talking about the worst camera still. Worst video camera. What's the next section they got? Grab the bone. These are the games they're playing, and then the worst camera, and then the wrap up. So we're here close to the end. It's a good way to get news, but it is, I I don't know. What's like your number one resource online
For news
for
on
news?
cameras?
Yeah, for news
I-
and just like
I-
what you're into.
You know what's funny is I don't watch as many videos of people reviewing content anymore. So
Reviewing content or reviewing cameras?
Sorry, reviewing cameras, that kind of content. But what I do instead is I've already subscribed to so many people who do review cameras that's how I get my news, is just by looking at my feed. This camera must have been released today. And then I'll go to like B&H and look at the specs. Because I don't necessarily need someone to just read me a spec sheet. Because a lot of those camera reviews are, and we've talked about this, people who do camera tests, it's just like, oh, look, again, here's my dog. It's literally in my backyard or something, and it's never someone actually putting the camera through its paces on a shoot. So that's why, especially nowadays, I have the luxury of renting cameras and being able to actually test it on a job. Which again, I'm going to rent that Z200 and then just have it on the side, because I'm not going to rely on it for that job. I'm just going to have it and test it.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something kind of circular about the way that YouTube content gets made these days, where I'm reviewing the camera and its abilities to make this YouTube video that you're currently watching. And it's very rare that you find something where it's like reflected elsewhere. This is the worst camera of the year.
Well, it's weird to see like test footage and be like, this isn't real test footage,
because it's not a real project.
Exactly. It's like, well, put it actually through its paces and like let me see how it actually performed. Not like, this is a chart. Like, I prefer people who don't show me charts usually.
Because you don't like Gerald Undone?
No.
Oh, I like Gerald.
Like, his content's very B&H,
Okay.
spec section, which is cool. Like, it's good that somebody's literally putting a camera through its paces and like finding out like, does it fringe on the edges? It's like, I guess that's cool to know, but I've never once been able to tell,
in real footage,
on any real footage.
Yeah, I like Gerald. I like his methodology. He's very precise with his testing and stuff. I enjoy the level and attention to detail that he provides. And then I want to say Caleb Pike still makes good stuff.
He makes great content. He makes way more practical content for somebody who genuinely wants to be better or more proficient, because he'll come out with like guides or kits and like, here's like how to build this interview light setup or whatever, and he'll walk you through step by step, which I appreciate, especially trying to find that content coming up. It's like very few people want to give away the secret sauce, and he's one of the people who do.
Yeah, he's always kind of maintained beyond just the specs of the camera. It's more about the technique or the practical how-to. Here's how to build this. Here's how to set this up. Here's how to optimize your workflow. And that's really nice. In addition to just the normal, hey, this camera's coming out. Here's what it's going to do. Or, hey, they lent it to me and I got to test it.
Exactly.
Which is cool too.
Like even in the audio side, there's the Curtis Judds that do very technical tests. But in his world, it's mostly audio. So he's doing more audio tests and like just reading, a script and then letting you kind of just listen. And I think that's very beneficial. Obviously, it's a lot easier to do than video. You can just set up, in a podcast room. But
yeah, because I guess every camera could apply to the same spot. Yeah, I don't know if it's easier. It's just different.
To set up microphones, you can set up a whole bunch of microphones right above you and just, all right, and microphone B, microphone C.
You can do the same thing with cameras too.
He just sets himself in a silhouette, and then you're just
listening.
Yeah, you just listen.
No, I like that they are still doing this stuff where they were, because they switched companies. They're at Petapixel now, but they were somewhere else before. I forget where it was, at DP Review or something like that, where they were prior. That's my alarm for wrapping things up. Busy day.
Shit.
I think they're almost done though. Yeah, they're just
nice.
They're talking about their podcast and whatnot. So
no, this is cool. I mean, I definitely appreciate people making content. But yeah, I consume it a little less now when it comes to cameras and gear reviews, because like I said, it's a little bit easier for me nowadays because I've had experience operating cameras. I don't necessarily need someone to like show me the camera and talk about the specs, I can just read the spec sheet.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make the content that I think I would enjoy, which I've always kind of done that.
The content that you're making now, I think, is way more beneficial because it's like, here's me going through my day, and like that's what I want to see. It's the DE_CON, I think is his Instagram handle.
Oh.
The guy I keep sending you.
Oh yeah, yeah. His
like,
stuff is good.
Yeah, he does like lighting breakdowns basically, but he's like a active DP essentially, and he just wears like a head-mounted camera and just walks you through his setup. And it's just like, this is beneficial because you're actually working. It's not you in your bedroom being like, here's a new camera that came out.
Yeah.
That everyone else, is making that same exact content versus this is someone making unique content, and it's about obviously lighting. It's very universal, but no one's doing it exactly that way that day.
That's true. Yeah, I like the passive content as well. Just listening, having it on the background. When they show like, here's an example of this. Look at this photo. I'm like, I have to use my eyeballs, and a lot of times I just want to use my ears.